Hello, BookTube. Well, it's still a mess here in Boston. There's ice everywhere, there's snow everywhere. But it was a bright and sunny day, and used book hunting waits for no man. So I went out, even though I was strongly tempted to stay in. I went out and I poked around and found some basements and some thrift shops and whatnot, and ended up, as usual, coming back with a stack of books. I thought I'd show them to you and talk about them a little. Oh God, help us! My permanent hat here is even worse by the weather. Starting with this one. This is a paperback of Mrs. Adams in Winter by Michael O'Brien, which I had back when it came out, 10 years ago, and got rid of for some reason. It's the story of a trip that Louisa Adams, John Quincy Adams' wife, made with her son, but without John Quincy Adams himself. She made a trip by carriage in 1815 from St. Petersburg all the way to Paris, which was not a very safe thing to do. It was, by any accounts, a major adventure, and she handled it quite well. It's a great story, and it was a great idea for this author to realize that, instead of folding it into a bigger biography, to tell it whole, just as an adventure on its own. And I thought, when the book first came out, I thought it was spectacularly effective. I don't know why I didn't keep a copy. And the next one is something I had no idea about. I'd never heard of it. It's called Bodyguard Ransom. It's part of the Bodyguard series. I guess the first book in the series was Hostage. Now I want it, very much so. It's by Chris Bradford. This is the, I think, UK cover. It's the Bodyguard series, and the bodyguard in question is Connor Reeves, and he's 14 years old. He's just a martial arts expert. I think that's a fascinating idea, and I've never heard of the series, never saw it before in my life, and I like the premise, so I wanted to give it a try. I think this is probably a bit old. Well, no, 2014. That's not that old. But I don't think it ever came out in America. At least I don't recall it. So now I need to keep my eyes open for Bodyguard Hostage, because it's the first book. But I don't think it's going to matter much. And then there's this thing, How the Weather Was by Roger Kahn. He's famous. If he's going to have immortality for anything, it's going to be for The Boys of Summer. And this is a collection of his longer occasional reporting pieces. And he was great at that. Just great at turning in the kind of, 10,000 word piece that you as an editor would make room to run it, because it was so good. Just a whole world on its own. And that this is a collection of those pieces. Some crime stories, some profiles of famous people that he knew, like Robert Frost, and of course, the first chunk of it is his sports reporting, which he was better at than anybody at the time. And then the next one is something, it's True Compass, the memoir that Senator Edward Kennedy wrote shortly before his death. And the reason I got it, I had a copy and I read it and I thought it was interesting but not worth keeping. And the reason that I got it is because his ghostwriter, his co-writer, his confidant for the whole thing was Ron Powers, a great biographer, a great writer, and a great guy. Who wrote a fantastic biography of Mark Twain, for instance. And he was on my mind because his new book, No One Cares About Crazy People, is devastating. And when I was reading that book, I was remembering all the good passages in here. I was remembering all the Ron Powers passages in here, and I was thinking, I really ought to give that book a second try. And then it appeared for free. So I grabbed it. The next one, when you're used book shopping, usually there's one real find, something that you weren't expecting, something that you've never seen, something that you really want. And this is that for today. This is Alexander Woollcott's When Rome Burns. It's just a collection of his pieces for The New Yorker and a couple of other places. It was his wry, humorous, deadpan pieces. And I have a little, in fact, I wonder if I have it within reach here. I have a little old pocket paperback of While Rome Burns, and I've read it to death. I've reinforced it 1,000 times with tape, and I've kept it even when I've got rid of a lot of other mass markets, because I've thought, well, you'll never find the hardcover to it. It will never appear, and here it is. As you can see, it's in terrible condition, so I am going to have to lovingly fix it, and I will gladly do that. And then, as a reward for the time necessary to lovingly fix it, I will reread it. It occurred to me when I was lugging it back here that I haven't read it in probably 15 years. and that's too long. Alexander Woollcott is too long. It's too long to wait before reading and enjoying him. And then I found a little weakness of mine, UK trade paperbacks, these oversized UK trade paperbacks. I love them. I absolutely love them. I wish that American trade paperbacks were like them. And this is What Came Before He Shot Her by Elizabeth George, which was a kind of a companion to... It was kind of an interesting thing. The book, With No One as Witness, was that the name? Yeah, well, With No One as Witness had an incident in it that directly impacted the plot of that book and was sort of sewn up in the plot of that book, and yet it clearly betokened a larger story of its own. And the author went and told that story in this book. I don't think I ever read it. I read the With No One as Witness. I love Elizabeth George's books, but I don't think I ever read this one. So to find it in a UK trade paperback, which is just the format that I would want to read it, was a distinct treat. And then 2 hardcovers that I'm slowly going to build a shelf. I've had these many times, and I've got rid of them many times, and this is it. This is it. I'm going to reacquire them, reread them, re-annotate them, and never get rid of them again. And they are the Patrick O'Brian Aubrey and Maturin series. Book number 2, Post Captain, and book number 3, HMS Surprise. I have 4 of the last 4 books in the series, and I don't think I have any of the others. I had them all at one time or another. I had them a couple of times, and they are so incredibly delightful to reread that, like the Alexander Woollcott, the reward I will give myself for lugging them back here is to reread them. They're so good. If you have not invested the time in this series, you really should. Once you get used to the lingo, once you get used to the odd narrative tics that the author intentionally imports to the story, you'll never read anything like it. You'll love it, and you'll find yourself part of a large group of people who it has some of the most devoted fans you'll ever find. And the last book we'll look at today, the thing that was the hardest thing to lug back here, I've had it many, many times, and it will be familiar to all of you. You've all seen it in used bookstores and thrift shops and flea markets. It's David McCullough's Life of Harry Truman. It's this big Megillah of a thing, and the minute I saw it, and it was like 50 cents, the minute I saw it, I realized that I didn't have it, and that I want it, because I would kind of like a whole shelf, a whole bookcase of American president biographies. I would kind of like that. My favorite of each one, this is, of course, the final word on Truman, as McCullough intended the whole time that he was writing it. So I got it, and I won't be as fast to reread as some of these others, but I will definitely reread it, because I haven't read it since it first came out. And I'm going to be reading a whole slew of presidential biographies this year. A whole slew of them are coming out, and I intend to get to all of them, and that's bound to whet my appetite for more. So there you have it. That is a used book haul to brighten up your day, I hope. And I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.